So there is sometimes like this wall, this like invisible wall that just comes up and I just can't do things sometimes. And I've learned now, for me personally, that comes out of the road to burnout. So if I have been pushing too hard and I haven't been letting myself rest, because I learned I had to teach myself how to rest. Like, it's okay to sit and either read a book sometimes. Those things are valid and rest is valid. And that's something that I've been trying to pay attention to as well. Hello and welcome to Divergent Paths. I'm your host, Dr. Regina McMenemy. I am a doctor, but not that kind of doctor. And this is a podcast, not medical advice. Divergent Paths is a podcast where we explore the unique experiences and perspectives of neurodivergent individuals. Our Everything You Need to Know About series will take a deep dive into some of the common characteristics neurospicy individuals experience. Joining me for this series is my longtime friend and host of the Business DIY podcast, Russ Catanach. If you've ever struggled to do something until you got super into it, only then to hyper-focus for hours, you might have an interest-based nervous system. And if you've ever beaten yourself up for procrastinating or wondered why just do it never works for you, you're going to love this episode. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening to Divergent Paths.
When anybody's starting a business, like you're starting your business here, I always think of when I started my first business and the advice that somebody gave to me.
Ooh.
Yeah. They said, do the American dream, right? You know, you and everybody tells you about that, right? Like you find what you love to do and it's something that can make money, and then you just do it, right? And it's and then he continued though, and he said, what they don't tell you is that eventually it becomes only about money and you start to hate it.
Yes.
And I was like, ouch, that stinks. So.
And your first business was about something that you loved.
Exactly.
And I watched you go through this process. I watched it become something that you became not interested in doing anymore.
Right. Right. But yet I still have the interest in doing it.
Right.
So it's always interesting to me looking back at that bit of advice, like how do you, and what would I have changed, like had I actually listened to him? I also listened to him because he said, don't buy Apple stock. Oh. It's gonna go nowhere. And, that would be worth like 150 grand, my $1,000 that I would have put into it. Right. So I didn't totally, listen to this guy apparently in the right times and right ways. But it's interesting to me that what I did when I started my business is still interesting. The other things were not as interesting to me, right? Like the dealing with the
customers, the contracts,
the finance stuff and all of that. It's like I made it where I was dealing more with that instead of the fun stuff, the stuff that I was actually interested in. Right.
You became the manager, not the doer. Just exactly. for audience sake, Russ was a DJ.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then grew his business. Yep. So he had a bunch of DJs working for him. So he became like the head, the top DJ guy for the company, but he wasn't
where
DJing
I no longer had
time
anymore. To go do events.
Right. Exactly.
I had to have other people do events. I had 13 people, 500, 600 events a year that I was managing. So I couldn't go out as much as I wanted to. And, looking back, that was a mistake. I should have hired other people to help me out and do those other things. And, hey, you do the things that I don't like to do.
Exactly.
And I'll focus on the things that are interesting to me.
I think that would really be like, if we want to take it back to this advice that you got, like hiring people to do the work around the business, not the thing that you love, but getting the structure set up so that you don't have to do the drudgery or the difficult stuff or the things. And not that it was difficult for you, but the stuff that just didn't hold your interest, right?
Exactly.
That wasn't why you got into the DJ business, because you liked doing events, and you have, as we know from our podcast here, an easy way of chatting with people that, puts people at ease. We have good conversations. And this was all part of what came across when you were, up on stage.
Exactly. And it was so much fun, but then I wasn't focused on that. So when you presented the topic of the interest-based nervous system,
yes,
all of that came back to mind
yes,
because it was like, ooh, I wanted to, and I probably should have chased after the things that were more interesting to me about the business. And I didn't. I
right,
chased after running a business and making a business successful.
right.
So
Which might have been an interest to you at that time and then just waned, right?
exactly. Totally. Because at first it was very interesting to
right,
figure out how to run the business and build the
exactly,
systems and make all the workflows and do
yeah,
the invoicing system and integrate with QuickBooks and do
right,
all
yeah.
those, like that's fun,
Because
but
you're
not
solving the
sustaining.
puzzle. You were solving the puzzle of building the business.
Totally.
Yes,
Totally. And that's
and
also
that
fun for me.
and for a lot of people with ADHD and
Okay.
autism,
Well, we're
solving
getting
the
closer to that
puzzle.
episode.
Yeah, solving
Getting
the
closer
puzzle.
to that episode of where I take the test, right?
Right, exactly.
So tell me about interest-based nervous system. What is that?
So an interest-based nervous system is a contrast to what we would call neuronormative, right? Where we think that urgency, and we live in a very urgency culture specific, our culture is very urgency based. Like you need to do
Yep.
things because you need to do them now, etc. So just that sense of urgency being the thing that will activate your nervous system to help you get things done. So an interest-based nervous system is kind of the opposite of that, where your interest in it has to be ignited in order to get you to completion, to get you to work on whatever it is you need to do, regardless of how mundane the task may be. Um, you need to have an interest in it to get moving on it. So that's your nervous system. And this isn't just your brain not wanting to do it. Like your whole body is impacted by your nervous system, right? And so when you have an interest-based nervous system, like you can't always just will yourself into doing the thing you need to do. You can trick yourself sometimes, but you can't
Right.
will yourself into it because that's not how it works.
So are you looking for things that are like you're saying, like the puzzle that you're solving, some sort of like a novelty type thing? Is that what you're looking for with this?
Sometimes, yeah, you're looking for it to be a puzzle that you solve, or if it's new, if you want to do something in a new way. And we've talked about this a little when I was talking about systems for to-do lists. Like I can't use the same system over and over again. And I had to start to recognize that sometimes changing the way I was just organizing my to-do list helped me be interested in it. Right. Because then it's not me going and doing the same to-do list that I've always done or used the same format I've always done. Oh, I came up with a new way to do a to-do list. And then that helps me maintain an interest, and it's new and it's different. And so it helps maintain my interest because it's new and it's novel.
What does this do for deadlines?
Well, it can work two ways with deadlines. So a lot of people, I think, who have neurodivergence, perhaps more so for ADHD, can be pressure prompted. So having a deadline can kick in your hyperfocus, right? We had an episode previously talking about hyperfocus, where you just have that bout of energy that runs on something and you can't quite control when you have it, and you just have to kind of run with it when it's there. A deadline can help you, that sense of urgency, when like, let's just say it's spring when we're recording this. Everybody knows taxes are due April 15th, right? For a lot of people, that deadline is the prompt. Like it will create the urgency because it has to be done by that time. And that's not the same as saying like, oh, I'm going to set this arbitrary deadline for me to get XYZ done. Like I have a meeting next week with a new business mentor, and I have to get a draft of some of my business plan ready, which I have been working on for the last week. I've been working on it in fits and starts for a couple of reasons. Partially is that my life has just been hectic.
I've heard.
Yes. But also that, like, these are some really hard questions I'm looking at right now and are things that are pushing me out of it. So I do get bouts of like deep interest where I get really into it and I get really focused and I've been working really hard. But I know that I'm meeting with her on Wednesday and I'd like to get something to her on Monday, but it's likely going to be Tuesday night that I'm going to be making sure it's 100% done and sent to her, right? Because the urgency is she needs to see it before we meet on Wednesday.
So somebody looking on the outside, I'm not saying this is me, but somebody looking at this from the outside could call that either like procrastination or laziness.
Sure.
Is that what people see this as?
They do a lot of times. I think this is a lot of where we see people have those ideas that people with ADHD are lazy, but it's not really that it's lazy. It's that, I can't always control where the hyperfocus comes or what it focuses on. I am delighted when it focuses on the things I need to do. Although I recently put up well, it wasn't that recent, but a couple months ago, I put up a thread on Threads where I was talking about I had been hyper focused on writing and I had a grant that I was working on. And I was hyper focused on writing and I got up to go to the bathroom. And in the time between, going to the bathroom, my hyper focus shifted on cleaning my bathroom. And I cleaned not just the bathroom that I was in, but my other bathroom as well. And I was most of the way finished with the second bathroom before I looked down at my hands and I was like, you're on deadline for a grant. What are you doing? Don't need to be cleaning the bathroom right now. Like,
right.
Why did this move here? But I don't always get my bathroom cleaned like when I want to. And so somebody might look at my house and be like, oh, there's an unfinished project literally sitting within visual field of me right now. Some stuff I haven't put away. I haven't put it away because I just haven't had the time to focus on that as a project because I had other things I needed to do. And someone might come into my house and say, oh my goodness, look at the unfinished projects. And I'd be like, yeah, I have ADHD, but it's not that I'm lazy, but they might look at it and be like, oh, you're so lazy, you didn't finish that project. It's like, no, my interest just didn't come back to that yet. It will swing around and, it will be the thing that, I get to when I get to it. But it's not that I'm lazy. It's just I can't always choose what's going to spark my interest.
So before the diagnosis, did you feel like you were lazy or a procrastinator?
I felt like something wasn't quite right with what was expected of me a lot of the times. And if I didn't, I definitely, well, how do I say this? Like, I learned how to trick myself into working ahead. And that's something that came out of college for me. And I'm going to sound kind of full of myself with this, but we're going to go with it.
Okay.
I knew in high school I was going to the community college. My grades really didn't matter. Like, as long as I passed to graduate, it didn't really matter. And that meant that schoolwork, I didn't have to work really hard at my schoolwork in high school. Like, the demands were pretty low. The, expectations of me getting my work done were reasonably, like, I didn't have to accommodate my ADHD at that time. And I'd say that stayed through the first couple of years of college when I was at my community college. Expectations, again, weren't so high. When I transferred to, the university and I was getting my bachelor's degree, my workload increased to a point where I felt like I was drowning and I didn't know how to do it. And didn't know how to keep up. And so I managed to trick myself into learning how to work ahead of time. But before that, I had never had enough push on my abilities. Like, my intelligence carried me through a lot of accommodations, a lot of self-accommodations for my ADHD when I was younger. I could just think myself through. I could write reasonably well. I can still write reasonably well in a short period of time. And so I could take that pressure prompting. I could take that right the night before. When I got to the university, I couldn't do that anymore because my papers, I didn't have enough skill writing at the level I needed to be writing at in order to do that anymore. So I just tricked myself into, this is how you're going to kind of learn how to do these things and learn how to accommodate by working ahead. And it used to mystify a lot of people that I knew. They were like we had a paper due in like a week and a half, like an 8-page paper, and most people hadn't started on it, and I had 5 pages done, and they're like, how do you do this? And I'm like, if I don't get this paper done at this time, I don't have time to work on this paper. And so I just had everything kind of like rigidly scheduled out. Now I know that was the path to burnout I had put myself on. Because I wasn't working with my interest-based nervous system. Then I was creating these false sense of urgency that I then tried to hold for the rest of my life, because then I felt like I was, performing at whatever level I was supposed to be performing
at. You just, okay, the working with it versus working against it. What define that for me? What is that?
Well, working with my ADHD is me understanding that I have a specific window of time a day. It doesn't always happen at like the time I want it to, but I'll have like 2 or 3 hours I can focus and get a lot of stuff done. I would like to know when it always is going to happen, and I don't always know when it's going to happen. But I started to teach myself to understand that I didn't have to work at that capacity all day long. And that was really the difference, right? Working with my ADHD means the other day I was really low motivated. I was tired. I hadn't slept well. I've been sick on and off for months. Like I was just not. I started the day off. And I actually used ChatGPT to really help me with this. And so I just said to my ChatGPT, I need to get work done today, and I don't know how to focus. I had a really busy weekend. I'm really tired. I don't know what to do. And so I literally talked it through with my ChatGPT about like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get stuff done today? And ChatGPT was like, identify what you need to do. Identify what you should do, which is like this next level of importance, and things that you could do, which were things that are nice, but aren't things that you have to do right now, today. And I'm like, okay, this is good. So then I put into ChatGPT, I need to clean my kitchen, I need to make this phone call, and I need to do this paperwork that I need to do for taxes, conveniently enough. So tie this back to conversation. And ChatGPT is like, okay, which one of those is going to be the easiest for you to do first? Do that one first and get the dopamine from getting it done. And I'm like, oh, that's a novel idea. Because once you get something done, it's easier to get something else done. And so then I ended up going through and having a reasonably productive day on a day that I would have possibly not. My ChatGPT also was great and said, maybe this is a day you just rest. Maybe this is a day you just rest and you take the lead from your brain telling you that you're not ready for this today. But I'm like, but I have these things I need to get done. So I did the things I needed to get done. And I think I ended up doing like a should do. And then I went just completely off the rails because I got hyper-focused on something else and worked for like 2 hours on something and then had a brain fire over it. And it was super exciting, but that's an accommodation of me trying to work with it versus against it.
It's interesting the use of AI for that. That's really cool. And I love, doing the little chats with ChatGPT, of like just doing the voice chats with it. Even I don't know if that's how you did that, but the voice chat's fun. I do improv with it.
Oh, interesting.
I'll do improv scenes. It's really cool.
Fascinating.
For like, practice and warming up. Just don't do it with Siri, because if you ask Siri, like, what am I going to do today? Or what should I do today? It'll just say, okay, playing Marvin Gaye. I mean, it's not quite there. Can't always depend on those AIs.
Right,
I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The focused and the starting on tasks. Sometimes, like you're looking at that mountain of tasks and you'll sort of get like, almost like that paralysis, right? Where you just don't want to start on anything.
Yep.
Is that what you're experiencing when you're looking at a big task list?
Yeah. Sometimes it's, if I have too many tasks, too many things to do, the list itself looks impossible, just because there's so much to do. And I have trouble like prioritizing what needs to be done. But there are times when I will need to do something small. I'll need to wash my dishes. And I have a really hard time, especially if I get sucked into doom scrolling or scrolling on social media, or even I have a phone game that I've been playing for years. If I get sucked into playing my phone game, I can lose an hour, just because I get stuck in something like that, which is, giving me cheap senses of dopamine, but not really helping me like move on. So there is sometimes like this wall, this like invisible wall that just comes up and I just can't do things sometimes. And I've learned now, for me personally, that comes out of the road to burnout. So if I have been pushing too hard and I haven't been letting myself rest, because I learned I had to teach myself how to rest. Like, that's one of the things
Right.
about having had a hyperactive brain for so long. I didn't learn how to rest because until I exhausted my brain, I usually can't sleep until I have exhausted enough out of my brain to sleep. Like, I had to teach myself to rest. I had to teach myself it's okay to sit and either read a book sometimes or just watch a TV show or put on a movie and just, check out whatever it is that I want to do. Those things are valid, and rest is valid, and that's something that I've been trying to pay attention to as well. So I have to be careful with the burnout because the walls come up more often and for, things that shouldn't be big burdens.
So is this also, I've seen where, decisions are difficult to be made, right? And
Yep.
you've talked about that too. And it's a little, like maybe it was the people pleasing stuff that we talked about in one of the episodes.
Yeah.
But there's also, I guess, just the, analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah.
Of, we talked about task paralysis. It's probably the same sort of thing, right? Where sometimes decisions pop into your head. You just can't make the decisions because you're over analyzing it and over trying to, figure out that. In business, that could be very costly.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that can be, where you're not putting out a new product or you're not putting out, communications because you're holding back on that stuff.
Right. Yep.
How would you advise a business that is maybe seeing that, or maybe even, it's the business owner, or it's one of, it's the team that's working on something where they're just stuck in that? Like, how would you advise them?
In terms of a business or in terms of somebody working with an employee, like which way?
I would say probably working with an employee would probably be the way I would want to know this answer.
So if you're coming up against this and you see that you have an employee that is struggling in like this task paralysis or has a bunch of things to do, having an open conversation with them about how do you prioritize? Like, okay, let's prioritize your list. What do you have going on? What are like I did with the Chat GPT, what do you need to do? What are the needs right now? And sometimes just having someone to, like, I mimicked, Chat GPT mimicked that for me. I'm currently launching this entire business by myself. You are one of my, main consultants that I talk to about the business, who I run the ideas through, who I'm, kind of honing in on what I'm doing now. But most of my days right now are spent me alone trying to work out how this business is going to go. And I am an external processor. Like, I only just discovered that journaling is an external process. Like, you're just writing for yourself, right? But that's me putting it out of my brain, right? And so
You're
I need
downloading it. Yeah.
Right. I'm downloading it. I'm getting it out. I'm using that as a process. And that's what I often need to break through paralysis, is to be able to have someone who, even if they just sit and listen to me rattle off for like 2 minutes about whatever it is I need to rattle off, I will figure out the things will line up in my brain to tell me, oh, you need to do this before you do this, before you do this. But I have to have that outside process in order to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I've I feel like that there's been, I don't know, it just comes into play so often, with
Right.
the analysis paralysis, and the task paralysis. Like I've seen that so much in my work, where working with people,
Right.
helping them to get through to just complete a task, or to get something to move forward. And I've done that managing up and managing down
Yeah.
in positions that I've been in. So it's a tough one. And something that I think everybody's going to hit at some point.
Absolutely. And I don't think that even has necessarily to do just with neurodivergence either. It's just, it might be more prevalent with neurodivergence. But I mean, even think people who might be neuronormative would have the same
Well, see, that's what
problems.
I think about and now I'll pat you. You took your turn of patting yourself on the back. I'll take my turn at patting you on the back. Yeah. Because I think what you're talking about in these episodes, right? Like I find myself applying them just no matter who I'm talking to, right? I mean, this advice is not just for
Right.
a person, working with a person that's neurodivergent. It is working with everybody. I mean, it's good advice to do this for everyone. So there you go. I'm patting
Thank
you
you.
on the back for that.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's part of it too, is like one of the things I want to do in terms of driving inclusivity for neurodivergence in workplaces is to have people understand that the accommodations you would make for neurodivergent people are good for everybody. They're
Right.
they're just good around, all around. And that's really the big thing that I would want people to take away. One of the things I really want to work on is I want to help companies understand the interview process better and understand ways that you can interview people that are more neuro inclusive. And that's going to make things easier for people who have obsessive compulsive disorder, people who have anxiety, people who have ADHD, and people who have autism. Like, those are going to really help those groups, but they're going to help people that don't have them too, because those accommodations are really simple and a lot of times are really easy for you to provide. Like the worst example of this, I will give you the worst example ever of a company that attempted to accommodate neurodivergence and to make the interview process more equitable. They gave me the questions for the interview 15 minutes before the interview. And that was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. I have never been so nervous going into an interview as I was going into that interview, because 15 minutes gave me nothing. It just gave me time. Like I literally, and there was like 10 questions, multiple part
Yeah.
questions that I got 15 minutes before I was going to walk into a panel interview.
Why why would they think that's a good
I
idea?
have no idea. It just rammed I wasn't nervous until I got the questions. And then all of a sudden I was like, do I need to write
Yeah.
notes? I don't know what's important here. I don't know what to focus. Like it just threw such a wrench in. Now, if they
Yeah.
had given me the questions even an hour before, 2 hours before, something where I had enough time to like digest them, that would have been fine. Preference, like I think it's preferable, and we've been doing this. I've been doing this with the interviews for the podcast. I get them those questions. I try to do 3 or 4 hours before, so they don't have a day to ruminate on it. But I don't give the straight questions anymore. I just give like topics and like broad ideas, because people would be giving answers before I ask the questions in
Right.
anticipation, because I'm working
Totally.
with a bunch of neurodivergent people who have come up with 100 answers to every question now. Like now I give topics instead of specifics, and that seems to help a lot. But I try to time them. So like I was interviewing somebody who was on the East Coast, and so I had emailed them out at like 11 o'clock p.m. my time. And so she got them in the morning, and we were interviewing at like 10 or 11 her time. And so she's like, this was perfect. She's like, I had enough time to look it over, but I didn't like sit and focus and ruminate or whatever. I just kind of ran with it. And I'm like, that's what I was going for. So it's like, there's somewhere in the middle of that, like 15 minutes is nothing. That's just throwing your feet in the fire 15 minutes before you're on, you walk in the room.
Totally. Yeah. Well, it sound like a little of what you're talking about there, right? Like you hyper focused on the questions 15 minutes before.
Right.
And that caused a problem. Now, again, early on in one of these episodes, I believe I said that hyper focus sounds like it could be a superpower.
Right.
Which you didn't like that. You didn't like
I still don't like
the
that.
superpower because you can't, because as you said, you can't control it. So it's not really a superpower.
It can feel like a superpower.
Right, but is it sort of like a double-edged sword?
Yeah, definitely. Because it will poke you.
Right. When it pops in, right? It's like
you can't get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, you hyper focused on the bathroom cleaning.
I did,
right?
yes.
Like
Yep.
you did that, and that took up a couple of hours of your time instead of working on the thing that you should have been working on.
What I was on deadline for and what I wanted to be focused on. It took away from what I wanted to be doing. And, don't get me wrong, it's lovely that my bathroom was clean. Bathrooms were clean. It was lovely that got done. But, the sacrifice of it then was that I had lost that deep, engagement in the writing that I was doing where I had been, and instead put all of that energy into that. And then I had to try to push myself back into the space of writing again. And that's where the trade-off is. And that's the trade-off with the interest-based nervous system. For whatever reason, my nervous system took over my brain and decided that the bathrooms were the priority. And it was a complete fog. I did not make an active decision. I just started cleaning my bathrooms. And so, that's where it hurts, is now I have to go through some of the other things that I do, like some of the hacks that I have is try to make something feel like a game, or try to make it, so it makes it engaging for my nervous system, like these other, things that I can pull on to get back what I needed to get into, because I still needed to write the grant.
Right. So you're instead of controlling it, you're sort of hacking your way through this. You're figuring out patches and ways to motivate yourself to go a certain way. So gamifying. What other ways are there?
I can sometimes help with music if I put music on. I have a couple of I like the Bridgerton soundtrack to listen to in the background.
Okay. Nice.
Because it's a lot of pop songs, but they're classical versions of pop songs, so they're familiar but not. I can put that on, and that can help sometimes because that engages another part of my nervous system. Music is really good for helping regulate your nervous system. A big one for me really is feeling why something is important. I was able to get back into the grant because it's for the theater that I'm on the board for, and is something that's a very important space for my daughter. And so I'm highly motivated at wanting to make sure they succeed. So being able to get back into the grant writing, that's how I could push myself, because I'm this is important, and why this is important. So
right.
Yeah.
And what about, okay, now what if it's something that's not important in your mind? It is just not important, but you've got to do it. You've got to get it done.
Well,
and how do you get to those things?
Sometimes I'll race myself. So, I often make tea in the morning, right? And it takes 4 minutes for my tea to steep, right? So in that 4 minutes, how many dishes can I get done? Can I get the dishwasher unloaded? How much of whatever task is sitting? Because like kitchen cleaning is among the hardest.
Yeah, I've learned that from you during these episodes.
That I don't like.
You always lead over to dishes whenever I say, "Is there something that you don't want to do?"
I'd rather clean the bathroom than wash the dishes. Wow, I think it's just because it's just always there. There's always there's never a time when you don't have dishes to do. especially when you're raising small humans. There's
Well, when
always
they become teenagers, the dishes just disappear into their room. You have no dishes.
right. You're
So
like, where
something
are
for you to
these?
look forward to.
Right. On the
Yeah,
trajectory for not being able to find
uh,
them.
you mentioned the music, and
Hmm.
there's also, I guess, it would be selecting the right music,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Hmm.
Because music can also be a distraction for some, right?
Yeah.
Like certain music is going to be distracting for me.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
won't listen to that.
Right.
I can listen to like talk radio in the background and complete, like, it's a weird combination, but I can listen to talk radio and still like write something where
Oh
I'm paying
God.
attention to it, because the talk radio for me is just
It just,
background noise.
yeah,
I'm
it
not
kills it
really.
kills part of your overactive brain. It takes up that
Yeah,
space so you can you can focus because of it. See, I
right.
can't have anything with words on when I'm writing because
Okay.
automatically start transcribing and things become nonsense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it was my work in radio that made it where I can have this on in the background and still, cuz like that's what you had to do in radio. Like you had to have
Right.
something
I
on and then
remember.
and
Yeah.
focus. So it just
Yeah.
feels like that's, I don't know. I've
There's
always.
always sound like that in a radio, or was in the radios when there were
Yeah,
radio
exactly.
stations, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They've all gone.
Yeah.
They're there,
They're
but
there,
not
but that's
really.
just a completely different thing from what it was
Exactly.
when I used to go sit in the studio with you when you were running, the boards
Exactly.
for
Exactly.
uh, K101.
Good old K101.
Come on, K101. Yes.
Um, okay, so now let's talk about, we've talked about ways for yourself. What about,
Mhm.
and we talked in, kind of in the workplace, but also like, what about supporting others? Like in your household, could be kids, could be, maybe could be kids, could be parents, could be spouse, like
Right,
people in your house, people that you're, like just with all the time. Like you're going to see this more in
right.
those people because you're around them all the
Yeah,
time and they're
absolutely.
totally comfortable and they're just being themselves around you. So how do you
Yep.
support them when they're.
I mean, a lot of it, I think, is allowing for a fair amount of flexibility. When my daughter and I were coming home from running some errands yesterday, I'm like, okay, these are the 3 things we need to get done. What order do you want to do them in?
Mm,
Like, and how do you want the flow when we get home to go? Like, and I just talked to her about this. And she said, I want some time to chill out on my tablet when we get home. And I'm like, okay, fair. We've been out running around. I could use some decompression time too. Let's plan that for first. I'm like, okay, you need to shower and we need to braid your hair. So those things need to happen. Do you want to do that before or after dinner? Right? Things like that. And then adapt. So, like, we had a big lunch and it was kind of late. And so when we got home, she did her chill out on her tablet. And then I was like, because the original plan was dinner, then shower. And she wasn't hungry. And I'm like, okay, we'll take your shower now and let's get that done and get that out of the way. And then we can do dinner after. And so then we like modified it to work, more with that. With helping her understand her nervous system too, like there will be things that need to get done and like cleaning her room or whatnot. And I'll go in and I'll be like, okay, you pick up everything that's garbage. If there's something that needs to be thrown away, you pick up everything that needs to be picked up that's garbage. I'll pick up every piece of clothing that's on the floor, right? And then I race her. How can you get it done before me? How
nice.
fast are you? Are you going to work faster than mom? Like, what are, what, and then it becomes that ignites her interest, right? And that
Right.
ignites her nervous system's like, ooh, you want to race me? I can beat you, mommy, which, yay, beat, definitely pick up faster, do it,
Right.
I will cheer you on. And sometimes recognizing that, in terms of that kind of cleaning, I was never given any kind of guidance like that when I was a kid. I don't know what growing up with for you was like, but I was just told, go clean your room. And nobody came in and said, okay, what are the steps you need to do to clean your room? Nobody helped me understand that.
Right.
And so being able to go in and doing it together, it helps a lot. Even if it's organizing her clothes, if I go in and sit with her when she needs to fold her clothes, the fact that we're chatting and while she's folding her clothes makes it go a lot faster, just being there with her. And sometimes that's the same thing I need to, just somebody to be with me while I'm doing something.
It sounds like, with her and with yourself, you've learned how to embrace the interest-based nervous system.
Well, I mean, it's better than fighting against it, because all the fighting against it did for me was give me shame.
Right.
Like I felt bad about myself because I didn't know how to do certain things, and nobody wants to feel that way, and nobody's productive when they feel that way.
What are the mindset kind of shifts that you did to make that happen?
A big one was allowing myself just the space to know I wasn't going to be perfect. My house is never going to be perfectly clean.
Nobody's is. Nobody. We had somebody come over to, we're potentially putting in new floors. We had somebody come over, and I'm just like, the kids' rooms are going to be a mess, just so you know. And he's like, yeah, so are mine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is just it. I have become comfortable. So someone introduced me to the idea of performative cleaning, when you have people coming over and you clean up your house because people are coming over. And there's like a cartoon or a meme somewhere that was like, oh, this is the day where we make the house look like we don't live in it.
Right.
And I've stopped trying to do that. And I think that was a big thing. That was a big piece of my childhood, was living in a house that felt like nobody lived in it or needed to look that way when people were going to come over. And I don't strive for that anymore. And I try to avoid performative cleaning as much as possible. So I try not to clean just because I feel like I'm going to worry what the house looks like when somebody else sees it. There are times when I do that. We threw a birthday party. I made sure the house was in, really good shape. I didn't clean my floors because I had a cadre of 11-year-olds running through my house all day long. And I'm like, why am I going to mop my floors before this? Why would I do this?
You're going to need to do it after.
I'm going to need to do it after, because Lord knows there's going to be soda spilled and, stuff strewn all over the place. Like, I'm not going to worry about that. But backing off of those expectations of this idea that I needed to have a house that fit some sort of goal that wasn't necessarily mine. It wasn't a value I necessarily had. I was carrying it from, forward. Just made it so that, okay, I have a dedicated space in between my living room and my kitchen, that I have a table, that all of the stuff that needs to be put away, my daughter has a bin and I have a bin, and that space is always a mess. It's just, there's always stuff on it. There's always stuff that needs to be taken care of. And that's where the stuff that needs to be taken care of is. Now I keep stuff off my counter, so my kitchen counter doesn't end up cluttered with mail or other things that I need to take care of later. I know where to look for stuff because everything that I need to find goes in that one table. So having that space be that dedicated space, so that when she goes looking for things, she knows to look there first. I know to look there first, and it keeps it off my kitchen table so we can sit and have meals. It keeps it off my counter so I can cook. Anything that makes it easier for me to get in the kitchen and do my dishes.
Again with the dishes.
I know I did that on purpose, but it's true, right?
It's funny. I was just going to bring it all back to the dishes too, just to stress you out.
They're done. My dishes are clean right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So if there is somebody out there that wants to learn more about this, of course, listening to the podcast is a great solution. But what's another way to reach out to you?
Yeah. Hit me up on divergentpathsconsulting.com for the website. I am taking discovery calls, so you can book a, I think it was 20 or 30 minute call with me about individual coaching or workplace workshops that I can do. I'm revamping some of my services, and I'm getting some free downloads together as well, both for businesses and for individuals, with some tips and tricks for this. Thank you so much for listening. Understanding interest-based nervous systems can really help us understand where and how we get motivated. Do you have any tricks you use to get yourself motivated to wash the dishes? I know from the episode that's something I struggle with. Wherever you are on your journey, we would love to hear from you. Catch us on social media at Divergent Paths Consulting, no spaces. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, like and leave a review, and share with your friends, or perhaps someone that loves someone with a unique brain. Until next time, please be gentle with yourself.